Are goals like economic equality or economic opportunity, uh, racial equality, are those good goals for a nation?
If you mean by equality, equality of opportunity, yes. If you mean any belief that you're going to get the same end results, the answer is no. What those kinds of goals do is simply tear a society apart, often making all the groups in it worse off than they would have been otherwise.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. So, I was reading an article on the BBC the other day regarding the FA's plans to increase coaches and senior staff from minority backgrounds to match the current playing population, which made me question, do we want a fair and equal society, or do we want one that is covered in false representation and identity politics? Now, we can extrapolate this from football and take this to the wider society, where there's been numerous reports from so many companies that gets published, which details from CEO level down to the lower levels, the background of each individual based on whatever background they may be from, whether it be race, gender, and sexual orientation. And what always strikes me is when we look at the percentage splits or each classification that we want to bring into the world at this day and age, because it changes, it seems, from year to year. Whenever we see a discrepancy between those statistics in a company and the general population statistics, automatically we cry foul. And we always talk about there has to be an intervention in order to change these statistics, in order for what they believe to make it more in line with the population. And then equally, we always discuss what's holding said people back from having equal representation across the board. And at this point, as you can imagine, you cue every ism that you want at this book, whether it be racism, sexism, xenophobic, whatever ism you want to put on there. That's exactly at that point we then choose to discuss. Now, as you've heard in the short clip at the beginning of the video, Thomas Sowell outlined, in my view, perfectly as to why it is the equality of opportunity is the path that we're looking to take and that we need to take, as opposed to what society seems to want, which is equality of outcome. Now, we always seem to be fixated on the results, the outcome, as if we can push a button and expect all of us as humans to act in a certain way in order to get the desired results that we want, which, in all honesty, is just, it's not the case and it's never going to happen. As long as the process in order to achieve what needs to be achieved is fair and there are no barriers to access, or as less barriers as possible to access, then in my mind, we need to say, let the chips fall where they fall. We should be able to acknowledge at this day and age, and all the historical data that we've gathered, that there are clear differences in how groups behave, and as a result, what they prioritize based on recent and historical success. For example, certain groups excel in the field of sport and entertainment. And because of the success that they've received or that have had in the past and in the future, a lot of groups, a lot of individuals, because they look up to their idols, they also then prioritize the exact same traits. It's the same when it comes to medicine and IT. There always seems to be a basis around a lot of times what groups tend to prioritize. STEM subjects, law, accountancy. There's always some, we aren't created and we do things not by accident. There always seems to be a trend that happens. And for some reason, we seem to be keen to believe that if everything was equal, then there would be 50% of people male in this particular industry, 50% of females in this particular industry, and all and everything else in between, as if that's how an equal society should be. When historically we've seen that groups act in a certain way differently than other groups. So why are we now believing that this is going to be the case in a fair and equal society? So what's happening as a result is, in order to increase representation, because automatically we believe it's a unjust situation, it's going to require laws which will strip freedoms away from companies from hiring the right person to do the job just to meet a quota to say we have representation of X group, representation of Y group, just so we can say we're now a equal and fair society. But the problem with that is this. Not only are you going to have a situation where you're taking away the freedoms from people to be able to choose the best person from the job, which is what we said we want to be able to do, but also if you're hiring people based on a quota, you could hire people who aren't as competent as another person for the job just because, unfortunately, you've hit the quota of X people, you've hit the quota of X group. Therefore, you have to allow other people who their grades or their interview may not have been well or their work throughput may not have been good. And guess what that causes? That causes the person to be in a position that they're not qualified to do, which will make their life difficult because that means the job will be too hard for them, which means not only does the business suffer because the work that they output is not going to be as good enough, they also won't last long in the job because, especially in competitive markets like football, where you're not up for the task and you get found out really quick, it's not a fair game at all when it comes to certain positions in football. And you get found out really quickly because patience is not something that they like. And guess what then happens? They get fired. So what happens is you've created a situation now where that person probably has resentment because they felt as if they weren't given a fair shake. And again, this is where again they can cause another situation of racism because they will believe that they are targeted because of they're in this group or in that group, when in actual fact, these quotas, which has been designed to help, has caused unnecessary harm, as opposed to saying, as long as the process and the barriers are equal and fair as possible, and we try and remove all barriers we can do, we have to let the chips fall where they fall. So the question I always have to ask is, are we looking for equality or are we looking for representation? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Until next time.